In today's show, Ben Golliver from the Washington Post joins the program. We talk about his profile of Yang Hansen. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you 3 days a week in August into the first couple weeks of September. Then we'll be back rolling along 5 days a week. Today's episode, a very special one. We are joined by a Blazer blogger legend, the type of writer that makes everyone else look like cold ash in a pot. It's Ben Golliver from the Washington Post. Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Very kind intro. Great reference to one of Yang Hansen's best lines when I was chatting with him, right? I mean, what a bar. He's trying to compare himself to Yao Ming. Yao Ming's number one in paradise, and he's just cold ash in a pot.
That is really, I mean, I will say, the language barrier makes it so he doesn't have these bangers, but when he has spoken in Mandarin and in the way he is comfortable, he has compared the comfort of the rain in the forest of Oregon to a place that gives him serenity, and he's cold ash in a pot compared to Yao Ming. Like, the dude's he's got some words if we let him talk the way he is comfortable.
Oh, he's an incredibly profound, guy. I think that probably comes with his upbringing as well, maybe a little bit. But it was funny because during the interview, I sat down with him for about a half an hour, and that was one of the best lines. And of course, we're using the translator because, I don't speak Mandarin, as it turns out. And during the interview, the translator kind of broke the fourth wall, and he looked over at me and he's like, Yang is cooking right now. I don't even know how to translate this. So apparently it was a very elaborate Buddhist metaphor analogy that he was getting at there with that line. We translated it as best we could, but I thought it came through brilliantly.
Yeah, it was really incredible. I want to talk a little bit about Hansen on the court because I think it was fun in Summer League. But I think what you got into, and this is a story that Ben wrote in the Washington Post, it'll be linked in the episode description here for you. It's a feature on just sort of the person he is and the guy he is. And like you said, he's cooking. This is like a great Buddhist quote. Tell me kind of what it was like to sit with him and kind of tease out the human of a 20-year-old Chinese kid making his transition to American basketball life.
Well, let me put my cards on the table. I mean, I didn't really know basically anything about him before he was walking down on draft night to the stage from the crowd, right? And you hear all these jokes about, I'm in the middle of eating fried chicken when Adam Silver calls my name. And then all out of nowhere, Rich Paul just emerges to dap him up on his way to the stage. And you're like, what is happening right now? There's something going on that I wasn't clued into, which is always kind of a fun challenge for a writer. And so for me, within being down there in Vegas, within a couple of days, especially your fellow Portland media members were like, you have to write about this guy. He's saying interesting stuff at the press conferences. He obviously has a huge personality. He's obviously bonding with his teammates immediately, right? They're getting really excited to sort of welcome him to NBA culture. There's something here. And of course, you're always going to want to start these conversations with, can he play, right? And so you watch him a little bit. You see some of the highlight reel plays. Obviously, you see some mistakes too. But you're sitting there thinking, all right, this is not just some publicity stunt. This guy is going to be a real player. He's going to be someone who matters to the Blazers, especially after they move out DeAndre Ayton. He's going to have an opportunity here. And so let's see what he's all about. And as I sort of dug in a little bit more, to me, the main reason to write the story was just his immense popularity already. I didn't know who he was 2 months ago. But 5.2 million people in China are watching his Summer League game, right? Which is 5 times more than watched Cooper Flagg's debut for the Dallas Mavericks. And so right there, you're starting to think only NBA Christmas games get 5 million viewers. And he's doing it in the middle of July. And I'm sure there's time zone issues and everything else. So to me, it was what's going on with this phenomenon. And let's try to introduce ourselves to this guy and get a first impression on, kind of a historic player. I mean, the first guy in almost 20 years to be a lottery pick from China.
Yeah, so I believe the Blazers' first preseason game was scheduled, so it tipped off middle of the day in Qingdao, middle of the day back home. So like they could get a Saturday afternoon Chinese audience sitting down and watching Hansen play basketball. So I would say there's some intentionality behind that. But before you sat with him, did you know that he sort of had this infectious personality? Like, could you get that vibe before you spent some time with him?
No, I mean, I still follow the Blazers pretty closely, so I was reading all the reports coming out after the draft, and then obviously, being around the team, like in post-game interviews, like a scrum, just kind of seeing how he was interacting. You might have seen the clip that I asked him after Damian Lillard agreed to re-sign with the Blazers. I asked him if he had any like favorite moments or recollections of Damian Lillard as a Portland Trailblazer, and he went to that stone face that Lillard gave after hitting the Oklahoma City Thunder, shot over Paul George, and then he tapped his wrist for Gametime. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, this guy, not only does he have like amazing lines, but he's also got like physical humor too that's like translating perfectly. And, honestly, I felt a little bad for him because only about half the people in the scrum got the joke. I'm like laughing hysterically as he's doing this. Of course, I'm trying to like control myself, be a professional, and everybody else who's getting it is laughing like crazy. And then half the people are there looking around like, what's going on? But, it was clear that he had a big aura to him before I chatted with him, because it was towards the end of Summer League when we actually sat down. I mean, he had already been followed around by this 10-cent documentary crew. They told me they were about to put together episode 10 of a 10-part series on his last 2 months. And so you start to think, like, you're getting 10 episodes out of the pre-draft, draft process in Summer League. Like, you've got to be used to the camera, and you've got to be able to carry the story, right? I mean, there's not a lot of players in basketball who could carry a 10-part documentary like that, and I think he's one of those personalities. So I went in with very high hopes for the conversation, and I would say he kind of blew them away.
Yeah, and talking through his translator Chris Liu, who's like his guy, he's going to be with him. I think there is something special about that, sort of that relationship. What was it like talking to those two? Because he's in some ways introducing Hansen to the world. Like he is sort of this liaison to be like, I know that this dude's special in a way that maybe not other stars get that sort of relationship.
Well, it's like a classic comedy duo because, Yang obviously is 7 feet tall and Chris is not 7 feet tall. And, Yang is like kind of this bigger, personality, larger than life. And, Chris is very relatable with glasses and, almost soft spoken in a way that Yang isn't. But they've kind of had a working relationship for about 5 years, going back to when I think Chris was helping him through some injury rehab stuff, I believe is what he told me. And so you start to think Yang is 20 years old. I mean, this guy's been working with him for 5 years. That's a big chunk of his life. And,
right.
I asked him if they kind of felt like brothers, and Yang made a kind of a quip saying they were more like, friends, maybe that bicker a little bit, so that is sort of like brothers, I would say. But I found it to be a very smooth conversation. It's not their first rodeo. Like, they've been surrounded by cameras constantly. Yang to me carries himself like a guy who's a YouTube streamer. Like, he just has that nonchalant confidence where he's just always on camera. So he's just like, I was expecting him to like turn and be like, hey chat, like during our interview, because, he's just like that, familiar with screens and interactions and media. So to me, the language barrier really was not much of an issue. I felt like it was a normal interview, a lot of eye contact. Chris, definitely taking a moment to make sure he got the words exactly right. It seems to me like he has a real attention to detail and a desire to present Yang in the proper way. And so I appreciated his professionalism on that. And, there were no rush. I mean, they would have let me, ask as many questions as I wanted, which I obviously appreciate these days when it comes to access to NBA players. And when it was time to go, they were like, all right, let's go get some hot pots, dinner time. And I was like, great. You guys are having a great night in Las Vegas. I wish I could come with you.
Yeah, that sounds that would have been a heck of the second part of the story is Ben Golliver goes to Hot Pot with Yang Hansen and gang in Vegas. I want to talk about the market stuff because you mentioned some of it in your story about just how big Chinese basketball is going to be, particularly if Hansen can hoop. And I want to talk about whether he can hoop. We will do that in the second segment. Join us there, won't ya? First, I want to tell you that this show is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever wish that managing your money was easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can be easier. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, all your investments, all your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. It's really nice to have everything in one spot. Like I said, like you get your all your accounts and all your investments. There's your checking account, your savings account, whether investments you have, if you have student loan debt, if you've got a mortgage, it can all be in one spot. So you can see all sort of the breadth of all of your money in one place and start sort of planning what you can do with it in the future. And if you share finances with someone, Monarch can help you both stay on the same page. Or if there are many of you sharing finances, all of you stay on the same page. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, and the code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right. Still chatting here with Ben Golliver of the Washington Post. So you mentioned some figures about, and you already mentioned in the show too, but in your story, but just how many people have eyeballs on Hansen playing basketball? What, when you talk to the NBA for doing this reporting, are they anticipating this big boom, this big Chinese interest boom in this young center for the Blazers?
Yeah, I think they were really excited about the initial reaction from Summer League, right? Again, the only data points that they really have are Yao Ming, who was a Hall of Fame center, right, number 1 overall pick, and then Yi Jianlin, who was a lottery pick, but he didn't really stick. He was 5 years. He was in and out. It was more like a cup of coffee. But they knew any Chinese player who's drafted in the first round is going to have an immense following right off the gate, or, right out of the bat. So they knew that there was going to be a lot of interest. But when you're looking at 5.2 million for a summer league game, I mean, again, that's comparable to the biggest regular season game. So what happens when Yang and the Blazers play the Lakers, right? Or what happens when they play the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry? What happens when he has his matchup against Jokic, his favorite player? Like, those numbers could be astronomical. And it's just a reminder of how big the Chinese market is and how long they've loved the NBA. I mean, this is basically their favorite professional sports league. Every summer, the big-time stars go over to sell sneakers in China because the market is just massive. And China has been waiting and waiting and waiting to have a star of their own to cheer for. And they just really haven't had one for, since like the mid-2000s with E. So it's been a long time coming. Of course, there's been strained relationships. Everybody remembers Daryl Morey's tweet about Hong Kong. And there's a year-long ban of the games on CCTV. All of that stuff has really been resolved. And so now the table is set for Yang, if he becomes a star level player, to be one of the biggest basketball stars in the world, and we've seen that in the women's game with Caitlin Clark, where it's like she just multiplies every previous record by like 3 or 4. And that's like the Caitlin Clark standard. And with Yang, it's like, you got to wonder, what's possible for his regular season games. Could we hit 10 million for a regular season game in China? Doesn't seem impossible, right? And maybe more. I guess some of the stats I saw, there's more people who identify as strong basketball fans in China than there are people in the United States. So again, the scale there is just, it's on a totally different level.
I saw a story that was written in 2021, so it was a little bit dated, but the NBA at the time estimated that there were about 165 million what they would call diehard NBA fans in China, which is basically the equivalent of like every adult in the United States watching an NBA game. It's like, okay, this is how many people plus, all the casuals, and you bring over casuals as you do these things. Like you bring over people who are like, yeah, I would love to see the 7'1", 20-year-old Chinese dude play against Steph, play against LeBron, like you said, like those types of things.
Well, and you've seen it with Shohei. Sorry to interrupt, but like like Japan, it's like a national holiday on like the World Series games, right? Like people just don't go to work so that they can watch him, play in the World Series. So, I mean, is that something in the future? Is that an unfair standard for Yang? At this point, it probably is. I don't think most talent evaluators see him as the next Yao or the next Shohei having like MVP caliber abilities, but he doesn't have to have that to have a massive, massive following. He doesn't need to be Ichiro. He doesn't need to be Shohei. I mean, even if he's just a backup center averaging 10 points and 5 rebounds a game or something like that, if he's like having Nurkic's career, for example, right? He's still going to have millions and millions of people watching his every single move because, like I said, people have been waiting for it over there.
I want to ask you about the basketball in a second, but do you think he gets a sense of what this means? Like, I know you quote him in the story kind of, but do you think he gets a sense of kind of his position in the media world, popularity world?
No question. I mean, I think that you just feel the pressure when you're a Chinese athlete, period, right? I mean,
Sure.
there's so many expectations. And, one of my favorite lines from him was his 8 hour rule. And he basically said, hey, and he brought this up when I asked him, are you excited about representing China like in the Olympics? Because they haven't made it to the Olympics the last 2 cycles. And he said, yes, of course. Like that would be an honor and a privilege. But he's basically saying, hey, if anything is more than 8 hours into the future, do not worry about it. And then he's like, if it's within 8 hours, don't worry about it too much, right? So his whole like life focus is don't sweat the small stuff. Try to stay even keeled. Don't get in your own head about it, because as he pointed out to me, the more you're thinking about those kinds of things, the more you're putting pressure on yourself, the less likely you are to perform well. And so his whole focus, it's a very day-to-day mentality, or like even portions of a day when you're talking about the 8 hour rule, where he said he wants to cherish every opportunity he gets on the court. He's always going to bring the energy because he's that single-minded in terms of how he approaches the world. And I think if he didn't approach it that way, it would all feel overwhelming. All the attention and everything would get to be a burden. And I think for him, he's also a little bit of a natural performer. He likes to be on center stage. And so he says, anytime there's expectations and pressure, it's a great opportunity for me to show my sense of humor. That's what he told me. And I think you can see that all the time. It's like almost like the bigger the crowd of media, the more likely he is to crack a joke, or the more likely he is to try to lighten the mood, right? And certainly he's around his teammates the same way. In the locker room scenes that we've gotten video of, a lot of times it's very lighthearted. So that's how he's approaching this monumental task. It's easier said than done. Of course, the better he plays, the more pressure there's going to be, right?
Yeah. He's skipping the FIBA Asia Cup, which is in August here. Do you think that's an important differentiation? Because part of sort of Yao Ming had to play for the Chinese national team in 2008, and it kind of derailed his career a little bit because of the foot stuff. Do you think we're seeing China maybe prioritize Hansen's global standing maybe more so than they would have in the past?
I don't have any real insight into that decision. What I would guess, just from talking to him, is that their top priority is acclimate to the NBA, right?
Sure.
Because he had not been over here previously. He had, this like coming into the draft was like a whole brand new whirlwind experience. He wants to feel comfortable and at home with the Portland Trailblazers, and I think that he has a strong desire to play and contribute, right? And so I think he doesn't want to look back and say, hey, there was any missed opportunity to put myself in the best position with the Blazers. And I think that they all realize, his career is not necessarily guaranteed, right? He's a mid-first round pick who some people thought was a second-round pick, not a lottery pick, right? So he's not necessarily going to be a top priority for the organization. And so you got to earn your stripes, earn your keep. And I think that, to me, that's how I read that decision.
Yeah, and I think there's probably some of it was just like be in America, talk to American coaches, learn the language, learn not just the sort of English, but learn like the basketball parlance that's going to be part of playing basketball at high speed in the NBA. What did you make of his game in Vegas? Like when he played, I thought he was fun. But what did you see from him, and just on the court stuff?
Well, he's a big guy, right? And so big guys make big highlights and big mistakes. That's sort of what I saw. I think obviously the touch and feel is what everybody goes to first, because he doesn't just pass into bodies, he passes to space. He's seeing the game a half second ahead. He's hitting cutters. He's throwing some pretty risky passes, but they're working, right? He's clear he has a spatial understanding that not a lot of big guys do, right? At the same time, like he's Euro stepping on some moves. There's some like pretty advanced footwork going on, and he doesn't, he's not programmed. He's not robotic, which I think is sometimes the stereotype, right? Especially of foreign big men. And so there's a creativity level that got people really excited. I think to me, the concerns would be, turnovers, because he's not going to be the fastest player end to end. When he turns the ball over, a lot of those went for points the other direction pretty quick, right? And because he is kind of a high risk, high reward type player on offense, there's going to be turnovers. So I think for him, it's going to be managing like what are the good turnovers versus what are the bad turnovers. The same kind of things you talk about with any like high level ball handler or person, high usage player. The live ball ones can be killer. And so I think that was something that came back to bite him. I saw a guy who really fought hard defensively and rebounding wise. He seems to really like boxing out to the point where it's like every opportunity to box someone out, he wants to, get a body, which is great. That's what you want to see. But the work ethic stuff on defense can't always replace quickness and versatility. And I think he's going to get tested there, right? Teams are going to try to pull him away from the basket. Teams are going to try to go at him. I didn't think he was the most imposing rim protector either. I think you could score on him around the hoop at this stage. I think that's something you can work on. You can definitely get better at. You learn the verticality. You get used to NBA athletes, and there should be some improvement there. But I think, really the whole thing boils down to me, agility-wise on defense. If he's able to kind of hang, he can have a real career. And the other aspect, too, is I think he could probably add a three-point shot and really have that as a weapon as well. And so if you're talking about a guy who you can station not just at the elbow, but beyond the arc, he can knock down an open three, or he can pump fake and go. Now you're beating defenses in a lot of different ways, and it's a very intriguing player, I guess is how I would summarize it. And I get why the Blazers would have used a pick on him. It didn't seem like a lark or like, some crazy gamble. Like, there's some real skills there. It's not a finished product, but it could go in a direction that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the big takeaway for me for Summer is that he looked like he belonged. Like, if you were just doing the blind scout, you'd be like, yeah, that guy's one of their best players. Like, it wouldn't be a question. You'd be like, yeah, 16's really good for this level, for this stage. Like, he's got some stuff, even if you didn't know about him. And you wouldn't say, like, he's a second round pick way out of his league type of thing. Or like, how did he go 16? You would just, if you had no idea who he was, you'd probably walk in the gym and be like, oh yeah, he's a pretty intriguing player. I like the passing. I'm with you on the agility stuff. I thought he got beat a couple times. He's big, and moving laterally against NBA athletes is going to be a challenge. He's probably going to play right away. Like, I think he walks into not a huge role, but based on, like, as you mentioned, they waived DeAndre Ayton. The centers behind probably the most likely starter, Donovan Clingan, are Rob Williams, who I don't think you can pencil in for big minutes or many games, and Duop Reith. Like, Yang Hansen's going to play basketball for the Trailblazers night one and probably many nights after that. So maybe regardless of his readiness, the opportunity will be thrown at him, and he'll kind of get to learn on the fly a little bit.
Well, there's not a ton of pressure, right? I mean, like, is there pressure for the Blazers to win next year? I mean, I don't know, maybe from some corners, but I look at this group and it's like, well, Damian Lillard's out the whole season, right? And you've kind of gone that direction. I mean, the phrase I used to use back in the day, a lot of people would say, is like, you're either selling wins or you're selling hope, right? I think there's also, in the modern era, you can also sell clout. And this Blazers group, to me, in some senses, it feels like they're kind of trying to sell clout. Like, they know they're not going to be playoff contenders, right? Like, really a really good team. But they also don't really want to rebuild and do the whole sell hope, let's try to get a number one pick thing, because they went that direction, got Scoot, and it hasn't completely worked out yet, at least.
Right.
And so they're kind of in this other area where it's like, let's just be more interesting, right? Let's bring Damian Lillard back, have this homecoming story. Let's bring in Yang Hansen, and our fans are not going to get all over him if there's 5 turnovers on opening night, because they're going to be excited about the backdoor passes and the Euro steps. And so I kind of feel like that is a healthy environment for him, right? I mean, obviously, if you're trying to drop him into a playoff team, he's not playing nearly as much, or if at all, his rookie season, and he needs the time to develop. If you drop him into a rebuilding scenario like Brooklyn, I know they were kind of interested in him. I could see that going wrong because there's like no structure. Like, it's just all young guys kind of being thrown to the wall, right? I think Portland's a pretty interesting fit for him.
Yeah, I there is some infrastructure for like competent basketball. Now they might win between 33 and 38 games, but they'll be a very competent 33 to 38 win team, I think. I want to ask you about Damian Lillard and sort of your take on the Blazers, because I know even if you've moved some 900 miles south of us, you're still keeping a close tabs on what's happening up here. We'll do that to close the show. Join us there. First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest. Some days on the course or off the course, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and stay energized. If you're like me and you're playing golf, you're going to be out there for a long time. It's a lot of strokes. It is not a quick game. It is a long time out on the course. But even if you are a much better golfer than I am, having that little extra focus, that little extra energy from a 5-Hour Energy Transfusion can be the thing that you need. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. So If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. So whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, still chatting here with Ben Golliver of the Washington Post. The Blazers have had I would say, a summer of pretty surprising moves, from trading for Drew Holiday, which kind of suggests that they're maybe trying to be competitive, to drafting at the time, 7'1" teenager who was somewhat unheard of, to now bringing back franchise icon Damian Lillard, who's going to miss the entire season. What do you make of sort of where they are? And let's start with Dame. Like, what do you make of that decision to reunite? In my world, we had one summer without Damian Lillard. We had all of 2023, then we had a summer without Damian Lillard, and now he's freaking back in 2025. What do you make of that deal?
I'm happy for Damian Lillard. I have for the Blazers, happy for Blazers fans or Lillard fans. There was such a rush of excitement. I don't really know where this goes, though. And I think if I was, being a little bit more cold-hearted and analytical and ruthless, I would say, hey, this is not the right time to be signing Damian Lillard to a multi-year contract, because really what's it going to look like when he's back on the court? And then if he is good, how long is he going to be able to stay good? And so to me, the Blazers still feel like they're kind of treading, in circles and haven't really found their direction, their identity, even though it's been quite a while since they made that trade. So I think that part is a little confusing to me. I guess I wrote during the NBA draft, you can't tell if the Blazers are coming or going right now, right?
Yeah.
I like the idea of getting rid of DeAndre Ayton. I like the idea of moving on from Anthony Simons. I think you're clearing out guys who are higher priced, who weren't really contributing to winning in major ways. And so that's probably going to be good. Doubling down on this identity kind of built around Avdia and Kumar. That makes all the sense in the world. Taking a shot on Young, why not? That's just kind of fun. But to me, I think there's a ton of pressure on Scoot Henderson this year to make the leap, to prove that you should have been the number 3 pick when you were, to emerge as a guy who can potentially lead and carry a team. That's asking a lot. I think I've heard mixed expectations for him. I think there's some people who are like, oh yeah, give him time. Other people who are like, the ship has already sailed. And so, you'll see how that plays out this year. But this feels like a make or break year for Scoot, because Dame is just sort of looming over the top. I thought Lillard was very smart in proactively saying, like, I'm here to kind of mentor these guys. And Billups call him like an assistant coach and all that stuff. That's great press conference fodder. But, when it comes down to it, there's one basketball and one starting point guard, right? And so at some point there's going to be tension there, whether it's, next summer or beyond. So, we'll see how it plays out. They do not feel like a playoff team to me this year. They don't really feel like a play-in team either, but I think they're going to be more watchable. And honestly, I think that was their top goal of the summer. I think that they're looking at, we have a fan base that wasn't thrilled at all after Dame left. We've got ticket sales kind of going down, even though the team made some level of progress, the second half of the season, winning some more games. I mean, I heard a lot of apathetic Blazers fans, right? A lot of frustrated Blazers fans. And when you're trying to sell the team and the fan base is the best asset the organization has, you want that fan base engaged. And I think there's no question to me they will be more engaged. The fans will next season than they were last season.
So some part of you thinks fuller building and the ability to sell, hey, when you purchase this bad boy, Damian Lillard will be back on the court in 2026. You think there's some appeal there?
No question. I mean, look, if you're going to spend billions for an NBA team and you've got a question of do we have to build the new arena, right? Adam Silver is raising that during Summer League. You've got to undertake that purchase knowing you're going to be in one of the smaller markets across the country. You're understanding that there's challenges, longer travel for the team and all the kinds of things that work against the Blazers over the years. That's got to be a labor of love, but it's also got to be pencil out, right? And so everybody's going to be looking at the books. And I would imagine if, this is one of the lower ebbs of the Blazers franchise going all the way back to the 70s. I mean, this is a team that for 2 decades straight was always in the playoffs, right? And it's been a while, and it will probably continue to be a while. And so, again, if you're trying to present to potential buyers, put the organization in the best light, the number one thing you can do is make the Blazer Maniacs happy, because the Blazer Maniacs are what drive the whole deal.
Yeah, it's they're in such a weird position, because I kind of agree with you. I could see them making the play-in just because I think they're probably something like the 11th best team in the West, and if you're 11, you could get to 10.
It's one injury, right? And we saw with Wendy
like you could get to
right?
Yeah, you could get to 10, but also like I think what we're seeing maybe is as we go forward is like 10 is not really that much of a reward. It's something, I guess, but it's not that much of a reward. But I do think they're trying to put out a team that takes steps forward, because they showed us this summer they don't want to take steps back. They're a 36-win team a year ago. Some of that may be silly season victories in March and April, but from the moves they've made, my read on it is that they fancy themselves winning more than 36 games as opposed to going the other way. Where that ultimately gets you, I don't know, but it does make you more interesting. It does drive interest a little more if you're just a little more competitive. Can you win from the middle in the NBA? Like I think
no. Yeah. And no, I mean, not the lower middle, right? I mean, if you can work yourself up into the playoffs and then you can take a step forward, I think that's possible. This is a parity era, right? And so it's not like no one should view this as being an impossible time to win in the NBA. You have to make an amazing trade, or you have to get a great draft pick, right? Look at the Thunder, look at the Pacers. Without Shea, without Tyrese Halliburton, they are not in the NBA Finals. They're not competing for a championship, right? But the idea that you could trade for a Tyrese Halliburton in a deal that wasn't some massive blockbuster, and then 2 years later you're in the NBA Finals, or hey, things don't work out with Paul George, we're going to take a risk on this skinny rookie from the LA Clippers, and then boom, he's an MVP 5 years later, and you could build around him and make a championship team. Like, those should be signs of optimism for the Blazers and Blazers fans, right? And so I think the collection of talent that you've described to sort of raise the baseline this year, Drew Holiday, kind of being probably the most prominent name there. I think there's some logic to it. I also think the flattened lottery odds, the Blazers sort of learned the hard way. It's harder to tank than you think, right? Like, you tank and sometimes you get Wemby, and then sometimes you get Scoot, right? Or you're the Hornets. Sometimes you get Anthony Edwards. Sometimes you get LaMelo Ball and his injury issues and his Cheeto feet tattoos. Are those real, by the way? I think those were real.
They seem real to me. They are.
So sometimes you get, it's you can't guarantee it, and then you also can't guarantee you're going to get a top 3 pick either, right? And so if you land in that 6, 7, 8 range, as the Blazers found out, you don't always get a star there, right? And if you're too good like you were last year to even fall into that range, now you're looking at an even different caliber of player. And so I think the Blazers kind of found themselves stuck in between a rock and a hard place. They weren't bad enough to get the truly generational talent or maximize their chances at it. And even if you try to maximize your chances, it doesn't always work out. Utah, Detroit are some examples of teams that have been really bad and not gotten the very best players, right? So I understand their thinking. I understand their logic. And also, I think they just got tired of getting kicked, their butts kicked, like, it's painful. And I don't think that's who they wanted to be. And so I think it's going to be a more respectable product this year.
Yeah, I think the math is the math. If Shaedon Sharpe or Scoot Henderson aren't really good over the next 2 seasons, this era is derailed to some extent, depending on sort of the other ancillary parts. That was going to be true regardless of the moves they made this summer. They made some moves that probably helped those guys, and it's still true now. I guess the Damian Lillard thing maybe complicates it a little bit on the back half. But yeah, I think like the math is the math. If those dudes pop, this era goes a different direction. If they don't, you are, I don't know if you're starting over at the beginning, but you're still on the hunt, because the market inefficiency for winning championships is having one of the, 7 best players in the NBA roughly. And if you don't have that, you're probably searching for it, or you're hoping for a great deal of luck along the way.
No question. You have to have the franchise player to really, compete seriously. And that's what's been missing ever since the first Dame trade, right? Or I guess the only Dame trade. He re-signed this summer. But ever since you lost that piece, the team has felt like it's lacked an identity. I think this year they have a chance to be an intriguing defense-first team that's annoying to play and will get after you and will have occasional highlights and flashes. And if Scoot can make them something more, that's the best case scenario. To me, he's of all the players they've got, like, I think it's kind of the ship has sailed on Sharpe. I just don't see him as that kind of talent. So, Scoot, he's got the work ethic, the desire, the physical tools, the pedigree. Like there's a lot there. If he could put it together, he could become that player. If he can't, they have nobody on the roster yet who could be that guy.
Well, there is a 20-year-old Chinese national who's recently profiled on the Washington Post, who's about to take this thing to the next level.
Crazier things have happened, right? Just ask the Denver Nuggets,
Yeah, exactly. Chinese Jokic, indeed. Ben, thank you so much for stopping by. Folks, subscribe to the Washington Post, support Ben's work, and check him out. Anything else you want to point people to as you get out of here?
Just the Greatest of All Talk podcast, greatestofalltalk.com. I do that twice a week, and we have a great time with it. So we were talking the downfall of North Carolina basketball this week, actually. So I'm sure you'd be excited to listen to that.
I'm gonna skip that one. I've been living that. I've been living that pretty up close and personal over the last say 7 years. So I'm good on it. Carolina has not had an all-star drafted since Vince Carter. They have not had an all-star draft in the league since Vince Carter. And the team that's about 8 miles away has had so many, and I'm so tired of it. So go listen to Greatest of All Talk, but skip that one. Skip that. There's so many other good episodes. Dear listeners, come back for more shows later this week. We're doing 3 a week in August and September, and then we'll get rolling second week September with 5 a week wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. Quick programming notes: the publishing schedule, best I can keep it going, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So you're listening to Monday, August 4th's program with Ben. On Wednesday, Brandon Sprague will join the program. That'll be Wednesday and Friday show. And again, on Monday with Brandon, then we'll keep it rolling next week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.